In this mini-lecture, I will discuss constraints on fluency, and this discussion connects with previous mini-lectures on assessment of fluency, discourse pragmatics and fluency, and it's concerned with factors to keep in mind when devising assessment instruments to measure fluency. I'm going to state the obvious. Test takers will be less fluent when they're talking about subjects that make them uncomfortable, when they're talking about subjects that are unfamiliar, and when they're given little time to plan or are pressured for time. That is, their fluency will be affected by cognitive constraints, socio-affective constraints, and contextual constraints. First, there are several cognitive factors to keep in mind. The familiarity or the novelty of the topic could affect fluency. So you would ask yourself how familiar or challenging the topic is likely to be. Describing photosynthesis would be more challenging than explaining how to use the photocopier. Clearing a jam from the photocopier and you're on your own, however. You could also ask yourself how challenging is the task. Giving directions while looking at a map is less cognitively challenging than giving directions without looking at a map. Giving directions when you can see the map but the person you're talking to cannot would be more cognitively challenging than giving directions when you are both sharing a map. So you can adjust the level of cognitive difficulty by choosing topics that are less familiar, and choosing tasks that are more cognitively challenging. Now, by affective factors, we're referring to the emotional aspects. And socio, of course, refers to social. So some of the things we're concerned with here are how the test taker feels about the topic, the participants, and the situation. How self-conscious the test taker is. And we can include procedures in our assessments that help test takers to feel at ease if we want to lower the degree that socio-affective constraints affect the test taker's fluency. When choosing topics, however, I think it's very important that the topic be one that you reasonably expect will not be more troubling or disturbing to one group of participants than others, and you keep in mind factors like gender, race, or age. Inevitably, you will have some test takers that become upset by certain topics, but you should avoid topics where you could reasonably expect some test takers or one group of test takers to become upset. Now, by contextual constraints, contextual constraints can also influence performance. Planning time is one factor. No planning time will result in more hesitations and repairs, and seemingly a lower level of fluency, probably. Increased time to plan may lead to increased accuracy, but it will just as likely lead to increased complexity. Instead of self-monitoring and repair of shorter sentences, with increased planning time, we would expect to have either greater accuracy with those shorter sentences or longer, more complex sentences with errors. In terms of time pressure, during the test we can give test takers a sense that they need to respond quickly, or we can reassure them and tell them to take their time, and this is going to affect their fluency. Environmental conditions, such as noise in the halls, could also disturb the test taker and affect their fluency. I once had to stop a test until the construction workers outside stopped using their jackhammers. Now, we have some control over these three constraints in that we can choose tasks that are cognitively less demanding. We can choose to create a more welcoming environment for test takers, and we can allow them time to plan during the test. I don't know that we always should do this, however. Just because test takers will be less fluent under these conditions doesn't mean we should remove these conditions entirely. It depends on what we're testing the students for. If we're testing students for testing students' ability to speak as part of a professional certification, and if they're aiming for a profession that is often high pressure, deals with difficult topics, deals with difficult people, then perhaps we want to see the test takers under less than ideal conditions. I think we shouldn't try to assess the test takers' fluency, but try to test their range of fluencies. We should try to gradually increase the cognitive complexity of the tasks, moving from the unfamiliar and easy to the unfamiliar and moving from the familiar and easy to the unfamiliar and challenging. We should try to make them feel relaxed at first and use a long enough and challenging enough assessment that we begin to get to see how they handle being knocked off their game a bit. And we should include tasks that allow for planning time and tasks in which they have none, or give them a task, get their response, and then ask follow-up questions that they aren't necessarily expecting or can't prepare for in advance. In this way, we can see how the test takers, how fluent they will be in a variety of conditions. And often that's what we want to be assessing, is their behavior under a variety of conditions. So, some questions to test yourself. Think of a job and a working environment in which a person might have to speak English. What cognitive, socio-affective, and contextual challenges does this job pose for a second language speaker? List 3 ways to increase or decrease the cognitive challenge presented by an assessment. List 3 ways to increase or decrease the socio-affective challenge presented by an assessment, and list 3 ways to increase or decrease the challenge posed by the contextual aspects of an assessment. That's all I have to say for now on constraints on fluency and how they might be factored into your design of assessment instruments. Check out the other mini lectures I've uploaded on discourse pragmatics and assessing fluency. Ta-ta for now.